Welcome back to I'm Not Invisible Anymore. I'm Renata. And if you are here today, that means there's a part of you that wants to be seen. Today's episode is about what the pattern actually looks like when it's running your life. Not in theory, in real life, in real people, in choices I am still not entirely proud of. So, stay with me. Last episode, I told you about the belief that got installed me when I was 15. That if I chose myself, I would lose love. Today, I'm going to take you through what that belief did to me across the next decade. A few relationships later, a few completely different people, and the exact same Renata. Yeah, in every single one of them, playing the same role, making the same choices, getting the exact same results. I left Brazil when I was 22 years old and I never came back to live there again. And the way I left, let me tell you, I needed to understand that it was not brave. It wasn't a plan. I just woke up one day and I realized I was getting too old for this shit and I couldn't keep doing what I was doing anymore. But what this was, that took me a few years to understand. When I say a few years, I mean a few years. By the end of this episode, you will understand exactly what I mean when I say that the problem was never the people that I was choosing. The problem was the pattern because I brought this pattern with me into every single room that I walked in. And before we go in deeply into the story, everything that I'm about to share here with you guys today, I'm sharing with clarity, okay? Not with bitterness. These were not bad people. These were just broken people like me. Also, this is not their story. This is mine and what I was looking for in all of them while I was there in their story. Well, so let me take you back when I was 15 again. And there was the schoolboy. If you remember from last episode, if you didn't watch it, go back so you can follow the thread. I had just broken up with the cousin, the first one, the first guy that whoever actually chose me. And I had paid a very fat price for that. My whole family turned their backs on me. And the lesson that I got installed was that choosing yourself costs you love. So I arrived back at school carrying that beautiful wound. And I walked straight into the next one. I had liked the schoolboy for a while. Well, he had liked me for a while too. And we had kissed once. And something about that kiss had made me really scared, uncomfortable. So I pulled away completely. I couldn't be around him after for a long time because I think that being close to someone that actually wanted something with me, that someone that felt something real, it was just a terrifying feeling because I didn't have any reference for that, for safe intimacy. I only had reference for earning it. And then very soon after all this, after me coming back home and leaving my life, he was expelled from school. In that moment, I understood that I was missing out on the opportunity to have the only other person in my life that actually wanted something with me. So this looked very much like a rejection. So I had to get him. And that rejection, that single moment, this is what made me stay for 7 years. I know that sounds completely irrational, but bury me because this is the truth about how trauma wiring works. Rejection didn't actually pull me away, it pulled me in. Every single weird thing that I felt about this kiss beforehand that made me create distance now turned into a very deep desire to have him and be chosen because rejection was familiar to me. Rejection was what my nervous system had been trained to recognize as reward, as the signal to try harder, to give more of myself, to make myself indispensable. So I did. We got together, and very early in the relationship, we lost our virginity together. I want to say something about that because I think it matters. Your first time is the first time that you are truly being seen by another person. And I gave that to someone whose relationship with me was already built on a power imbalance, um, on me chasing what had rejected me. But in my eyes, in our eyes, that was confirmation to love because that was a special moment with my person. And now you being with your person, you bond. But that was something else that kept me there. Something that I never really talked much until this day because I realized that also very late in life. That was his family. I never really had a stable home growing up. My parents were absent in their own ways. The house was like violent, like I shared in the last episode as well. There was no quiet family life, no sitting around the table, eating together, being together, going out together, receiving family or people at home. And in his house, I found all of that. They sat down together to watch TV every night. They ate together. They had these big family gatherings. And for the very first time, I felt like I was part of something that was organized, that looked like a real family. And I confused that feeling with being in the right relationship. And his dad, and this is where it gets a little bit complicated, his dad adored me. He would always tell me that I was the daughter that he never had. He kept telling me, like, through the years that he wished schoolboy had made different choices and left the country with me. But also in the years that I was there, he made me feel really stupid regularly. He had this habit of putting people in the spotlight with his jokes, the kind of jokes that were very humiliating, that crossed the line, laughing at your face so hard that you also can only laugh as well instead of confronting. And I did, I laughed every time, even when I was feeling super uncomfortable. Because I had learned very early how to laugh instead of confronting men who made you feel small. I had learned that joining the party was safer regardless of what was happening in that party. I was very confused because it all sounded like love and that they loved me. So I always felt like I belonged there. But at the same time, the feeling of being an outsider in that family was super strong because his mom was really jealous as well. She only had boys, and she always made it clear to me that I'd never be able to give anything to her boy better than her. And she would like actually verbalize these things. And I wanted to make a cake for him sometimes or something. And she would completely compete with me and make his favorite one and then tell me that she knew the things that he liked better, and that when I wanted to do something for him that I told her instead of doing it myself. And also his dad was always like making jokes regarding my intelligence, asking questions he knew I wouldn't be able to answer, and laugh very hard saying how dumb I was, that they were very academically smart, all of them. So I always felt ugly and very dumb around them. And yet I still kept coming back because even feeling dumb and ugly inside a family that functioned, even though it was imperfect, was better than going home back to mine where I thought that everything was completely dysfunctional. And underneath all of that, Schoolboy had a very serious drinking problem since he was 14. So when I met him, he was already drinking like from bottles. Um, he had real issues, and the drinking got worse around me as well because he understood the beginning when we kissed that I rejected him. So when we tried to pull back together and I was running after him, that gave him upper hand. So every time that he would try to open up with me, he would just remember that I could reject him anytime again soon. So he would have this tendency to, every time that he felt strongly something for me, that he would go deeper into drinking. So that actually meant that I was the person he loved the most, but the person that triggered him the most simultaneously. At some point, I realized that he was never going to commit to me the way I wanted him to. And in Brazil, it's really normal for the guy, when you start a relationship, to get commitment rings for the two of you to wear. So a promise ring. And all of my friends had boyfriends at the time, and all of them were crazy to put a ring on them. And they did, but he never did it. So I did. I chose them, I paid for them, I wrapped them up, and I gave him as the perfect present. And I told myself that this was romantic. But the
Wow.
truth is, it was humiliation, and I knew it even then. The years that followed were really chaotic in a way that is very hard for me to describe without making them sound almost cinematic. Like car accidents. He would total cars. I would drag him home drunk from bars so many times. I would be calling his friends because I didn't know where he was, lost drunk in the night. There would be fights. He would be bleeding. There would be scenes where he had his face completely disfigured from drinking situations, being in fights with other people that I didn't even know where he was or what was going on. We're talking about a teenager here. Let's make it really clear. And I remember this one night, right, that we were broken up at the time. He shows up at my door, like drenched in blood. He was wearing a white t-shirt. I remember that he was like almost fully covered in blood. His back was like completely scratched. His face was really hurt and bruised as well. And I remember looking at him and feeling so lost and so angry at myself at the same time that I still cared. The moment that I told him like he had to go to the hospital because that was too much, that I didn't have what he needed to care for him in that state, he just lashed out at me and he walked away like complaining, saying that if I couldn't help him, I was useless and just nagging. And I was like, you're not even my boyfriend. You're not choosing me. But then you go out, you get these situations and you knock here and you like, as if I had to take care of you. And at the same time, I wanted to care for him because I still loved him. And I also remember like I was so scared that I had to call his dad. And that got even uglier. The chaos, the unpredictability, the drama, the walking on eggshells, the relief when things were good. It felt like home. Not because it's what I wanted it, but because it's what I was literally had been trained to recognize as normal. A man whose moods were completely unstable, the behavior couldn't be predicted, who could completely hurt you and love you in the same breath. I had a reference for that, a strong one. And that reference was my beautiful dad. I didn't choose chaos because I liked suffering. I chose it because I had never been shown that anything else was available to me. That's not weakness. That's a girl who was handed a very specific map of what love looks like, and she followed it until she didn't anymore. But until she didn't anymore, it took some time. Me and schoolboy, we broke up and got back together so many times across this 7 years that I genuinely lost count. Every breakup was like the end of the world. We were on and off, on and off, on and off, and every cycle made it very much harder to leave for me because every time we got back together, I had a little less of myself than I had before. So it felt like dying deeply again. I wanted to hear this like very clearly because every reunion I had with him, I just didn't know who I was anymore. And I called that love because I was being chosen again, because he came back, because him coming back felt like evidence that I was worth something, that I was being chosen by someone again. Do you understand how dangerous this is? When someone else's return, someone that hurts you all the time, becomes your proof of worth. And then came some moments that I am most ashamed of in this whole story. Like when we were broken up, he started dating this girl from school, a friend of ours that we met together, that we used to go to her house, play cards with her parents. Another huge humiliation for the count. And that's not the worst part. The worst part is that I slept with him while he was with this girl deliberately, by choice, knowing she existed on purpose, just so I could text her and tell her. And I texted her. And I'm not telling you this to confess. I'm telling you this because it's one of the most honest things I can say about where I was at that moment in my life, which was such a low place. That was not cruelty. That was just complete desperation. There was a girl that was so terrified of being abandoned and completely unable to tolerate someone she loved existing happily without her, that she did something she knew was so wrong just to feel in control, just to exist again in his story, even as the villain. I rather be the villain in his story than being invisible at all. I stayed, of course. I stayed, and the chaos continued. Scenes that could fill a whole other episode. The kinds of things that when you say them out loud, people look at you in shock. With judgment, of course, but also with recognition, because so many women have been in their own versions of this exact room. Then, as if this chaos weren't enough, when I was 19, I decided to leave my home to go live with him in his parents' home. And I want to be clear that we weren't even together at this point. We were broken up, but I couldn't let him have any space. I couldn't give him room to breathe without me because if I gave him any room, he might actually leave for good this time, not return to me. Because at this point, there had been others. So here I come. I moved in. Not as his girlfriend, as his warden, as someone who needed to be close enough to control the whole situation, his life. I know very much how this sounds. I know, and I'm not proud of it, but I want to say it exactly as it was because I think a lot of women have done versions of this and have never had anyone name it for them because this was not love. This is not love. That's fear in a relationship costume. That's a girl who has never learned that she could let someone go and still be okay with herself, that she could choose herself, that she could have some respect for herself. And this is the moment the pattern of choosing someone you want and being rejected presents itself again. Because my dad and I, we were always very close. And this caused the first worst rupture between the two of us. We had a huge fight. And he told me that if I left that house in that moment to live with the schoolboy, I would never be able to step foot in that house again. I left still. And for the entire time I left, that I lived there, and don't you get fooled, it was hell. My dad didn't speak to me. He didn't call me once. He simply gave up on me. But I remember my mom calling me and she was saying to me, Renata, I had never seen your dad so sad and cry at the corner of the bed before, like I have since you left. Even in the worst time of his life, when he had the accident that he got shot 5 times, come home. My mom was there doing the job that my dad always did, showing up. And in all honesty, now I just realized that I just wanted my dad to care for once and show me real love. But even in this moment, at that point, he didn't. A lot of shit went on. And when I was about 20, I crawled my ass back to my house and my dad graciously allowed me back in. He was having the time of his life because I could see him feeling like he was good enough, thinking I told you so and you chose me instead of him, even though I didn't go after you, even though I didn't beg for you to come home. I felt it in my bones. And my relationship with my dad from that moment on was just really never the same again. Anyways, at the time I was around 21, there was what I called the Our Apartment event, me and Schoolboy. So his parents had offered to give us a down payment to purchase this apartment that we decided to buy, right? And I wanted it so much, not just the apartment, but what the apartment represented for me. Permanence, a home, finally a home that would be mine, but he just wouldn't commit. He resented me. He hadn't forgiven me for the rejection since the beginning, for all the back and forth, for all the shit that happened between us. So every time that I wanted to talk about the future, there was this wall. He never talked about the future. So I just found a way around it. This couple of friends of ours bought this apartment that was in the same building, and I used it as leverage. So I cornered him. Oh, and I'm laughing because this story repeats itself later in my life, and you will understand a little bit more. But for the moment, yes, let's just keep with I cornered him until he said yes. Not because he chose it, but because I left him no room to say no. I pushed him into like a permanent commitment because I needed to lock something down because I was terrified at this point that if I didn't create something like strong between us, he would leave again and eventually not come back. And I want to be super honest about that. Again, it was not love that drove that decision. It was fear. It was control. The very same thing I accused him of not giving me freely, I just went and I took by force. And one day I was so gone in my head that I decided that I really couldn't keep up with this shit anymore. So I had to find a way of stopping this, the back and forth, the toxicity. And the only way that I thought it was ever possible to have the strength to stop choosing insanity was leaving the country. Um, and I want to stop here because this is the part that matters most, not the story, but what the story was telling me about myself that I wasn't really ready to hear. That relationship wasn't a love story. It was a real freaking life classroom, a brutal, exhausting 7-year-old classroom. And every single pattern that would later show up in Dublin, in Spain, in my life, in every relationship after was already fully formed in that room in Brazil when I was 19. The pattern of needing to be chosen, the pattern of loving someone from a place of fear, which is not love, which is control, wearing love's clothes, that's scarcity, really. The pain of building structures around someone to prevent them from leaving instead of trusting that if they stayed, it meant something. The pain of performing strength while crumbling on the inside, of being the one who holds everything together, of refusing to let anyone see that I needed something to. All of it already there at 19, even earlier. And there is the thing that I really wanted to hear, because this is the part I had to sit with for a very, very long time. I was not a victim in this relationship. I was a participant in it. A desperate, frightened, unconscious participant, but a participant, because I created a lot of what happened. Not because I was a bad person, but because I was really terrified. Because I had learned somewhere very early in my life that love was something you had to earn and secure and fight to keep. And I fought. Fucking hell. I fought with everything I had and still was not enough, because you can't fight your way into being genuinely chosen by someone. And I didn't know that yet, or for a very long time more, to be fair. So that was the time that I decided that I'm gonna go to Dublin. But wait, because there was something very interesting also about this story that I haven't even shared a little peek of it. And it gets even more messy. In between the breakups with the schoolboy all these years, and there were many breakups, I met someone else. And we would be together every time me and schoolboy were off. You remember from the other episode what loyalty meant to me, right? Loyalty was something that was really, really important. So betrayal wasn't an option from my side, of course, because this one was completely different. He was married, much older, and had a kid. And the pull between us was the kind of pull for me that made everything else feel super quiet in my life. I was 19 when I started working for him. He was my boss, 35 years old. He was married, and he fell in love with me deeply. And I want to be very careful how I'm going to say this. I know how this sounds, but I'm going to tell you exactly what it felt like because I believe it matters. Being desired completely by someone who had everything to lose, there is a very specific intoxication to that. And I remember the very first time that we kissed, he was always offering to drop me off at home. And I knew that there was something, and I felt the sexual tension between us. So I was always very resistant. And I was super scared to open that door because I knew he was married and he was also my boss. But one day I stopped resisting and I said, okay. And on that day, he dropped me off. He made a move, obviously, and he told me for the very first time how he was feeling. And he literally poured his completely heart out. And he asked me if he could kiss me. And so he did. I remember my exact reaction. I would put my hands on my face and I'll be like, oh my God, you're my boss and you're married. You're my boss and you're married. I kept I kept repeating the words, I had sweaty hands, I was shaking, feeling so anxious, but at the same time, I was in the clouds. I couldn't believe that this was happening. I was feeling this pull towards him for a long time. And then there's this guy who desires me and he's sharing all these feelings. And I am in this toxic relationship with this boy that I can't get off of. So, yeah, it was toxic. But of course, at this point, you know that I had a knack for toxic, right? I didn't want to open this door, but bling, the door was now open. He would come pick me up before the office hours just to take me to a hotel. I'm saying like 7 a.m., 8 a.m., and just be with me. And he would come to see me at night when his wife was sleeping. He was also a DJ, so he'd take me to every single gig that he was playing. And she was never there, and I was supporting him on his dream. And I always felt like I was on top of the world when I was with him, and he would let me drive his car. It was adventurous, it was intense, it was forbidden. And I had grown up in a house where love was either absent or violent. So this overwhelming, all-consuming desire from someone who was supposed to know better felt like the realest thing I had ever experienced in my life. The sad thing though, it was like that his wife knew. Not everything, not the entire time, but she knew something. She would call me sometimes and be like, Renata, where is my husband? And send me messages and post on my Facebook stuff. Like, and even though she was so hurt and like, yeah, even though she was going through all of this, he still wouldn't stop. So for me, it was like he was choosing me. And I should be very honest here. I didn't make it stop either because being chosen by someone who had so much to lose and still chose me anyway, that was doing something to me that I couldn't walk away from. And I thought I was really in love. And the dynamic of work was just toxic because I didn't respect him either. Of course, I wouldn't. Well, he's your boss, but you know his secrets. You've been in his car. You've been sharing intimate moments. His wife called you on your phone. It was just like a completely inverted dynamic at work. It was really bad. I was the one with power and he was the one losing everything, trying to keep me. So I recognize now that that was part of why it worked for me. I also had control there. Eventually, she found out for real. She decided to try to save the marriage, and we went our separate ways. But not long after, she left him. So he moved out of her house, out of their house. So we became something official. He came to me openly, no more hiding. He was so proud to show me to the world now. I was this like younger girl, and I was in all of his gigs, and I supported him and everything. It was super romantic. Ha! Ah! Gosh, sharing this with the world. Renata, you have no fucking shame. I was 19. He was 35. Okay. Fuck. He was the second person I had ever been with, sexually speaking. And I think for a moment, not for a moment, for a very long time, because this went on and off for 2 years as well, I thought this was it. This was the real story. I remember schoolboy being desperate to get me back at this point, but now I had a boyfriend. The married man was now free, and he chose me. So I decided to tell my dad about the relationship, even though I knew Dublin was already in the works and coming up soon. But right there, I had a feeling that I actually wanted to stay. I had the biggest reason for that. It was December 2012, and I had everything ready to go, but I still made him an offer. I told him that I would stay. I offered my moving money to put as a down payment to buy an apartment together. I was willing to give up on everything that I had decided, because in reality, I didn't really want to leave. I was just trying to escape that toxic relationship. I didn't have the strength to stop if I wasn't somewhere else. But now I had a reason. I didn't have to go. But he said no. He rejected me. And from that moment on, everything between us began to die. So there was again, rejected. The boss had said no. The apartment with the boss was not going to happen. The future I had imagined wasn't happening. And schoolboy was still there, because schoolboy was always there. Because for all the chaos, for all the damage, for all the years of breaking up and getting back together, he was my true love. That's what it felt like. Maybe what it actually was? Two broken kids who loved each other enormously and had no idea how not to destroy what they loved. And I remember the night before I got on the plane to go to Dublin, I spent with him, schoolboy. And mind you, we were in his dad's car at the end of my street, and we slept together until 5 a.m. in the car, because my dad hated him and his family so much, because I had moved in with them. So he couldn't even come close to my house without my dad losing it. Yeah, that was a very sad moment. I was with him deliberately that night, knowing that I was leaving the next morning, knowing it was probably the last time that I was going to ever see him. And we cried so much. We held on to each other. We cried because we felt how much we loved each other, and how completely unable we were to not hurt each other. How two people can really love each other and that much and still be each other's worst thing. And we knew that now was for real. There was no more point of return. I was actually leaving the country. We were not just deciding to break up again. And then the next morning, I get on the plane. I left, not because I had a plan, not because I was ready. I left because I had looked at my life and understood that viscerally in my body that I was getting too old for this, that I couldn't keep doing this anymore, that if I stayed, I would just like keep circling again and again until there was nothing, absolutely nothing left of me. So Dublin wasn't really a destination. It was the only exit I could see for this chapter of my life that I had lived on for so many years. So schoolboy moved on very quickly, actually. 6 months later, after I left, he was with a girl I went to school with. Less than a year later, they were married. Imagine my disbelief. 7 years of lots and lots and lots of pain later. And to top it up, they very soon after the wedding had a daughter. Still, every time I came back to Brazil to visit for years, even in this situation, we would still find each other, get together, sleep together, and we would cry together because we still felt like we loved each other and we couldn't figure out how to be together without hurting each other, and we couldn't figure out where to unplug what we were feeling. It's crazy, even after being 10,000 kilometers away, we still kept like the strings attached. When I left, I still kept contact with his family. Every time I would visit, I went back to his place, imposing my presence in his life directly and indirectly, because living completely felt like the kind of death that I was not ready for. Eventually, for long years already in Dublin, I got over it, of course, because I had met someone. And remember again what loyalty did to me, right? It made me straight, it made me rational and be able to choose something regardless of reminiscing feelings. But schoolboy, until this day, at least once a year, he still find a way to reach out to me through some channel to tell me he will always love me and that I was the only person he ever truly got to really care and love. And I have kept the door cracked open subconsciously until last year, because that's what we do when we don't believe we deserve something better. That we can close the door completely, and if something happens in our lives, we will still have a chance to meet someone better. We keep on hanging on to the last thing that felt real. So, after all of that, after 7 years of chaos and love and damage and extra years in Dublin, thinking that I was completely cursed to love someone else ever again, I thought I understood something about myself. I thought I figured out the problem. And the problem was the kind of men I was choosing. So I chose something completely different. Some years after Dublin, I had built a life there, and then I met her. She was brilliant. She was creative, sensible, so beautiful. And she was struggling in a way that I recognized immediately because I had spent my whole life around people who were struggling. And I want to be very honest about what happened inside of me when I understood the depth of her pain, because something really lit up, and it was not compassion first. recognition. I thought this person needs saving, and I know how to do that, but I couldn't do with schoolboy. He was still a drunk when I finished 7 years later. His life was still the same, and I thought I was going to fix him, and I didn't. And I said, this is my chance now. I'm going to prove myself worthy, right? And at this point, I was working as a chef for like 3 years or so. And I met her in the kitchen. She was the head chef in the sister restaurant we had just opened. So another position of power, but still in a way that I could be in control. One evening we were together at the restaurant that she was working in. I was giving them training for the menu that we had in the sister restaurant. And there was this poem that she had written. The poem was like very beautiful. She was genuinely talented. But as I listened, I understood that this poem was almost like a suicide note. It was painful, it was raw. And the imagery, like the feeling of being a weight on the world, the longing for something that, I don't know. I remember like the exact feeling after she read the poem. The first thing that I felt that moved in me was not fear. I wasn't alarmed. I felt like I want to fix her. I want to save this girl. I'm going to take care of her. I want you to hold with me for a second now. A person reads you a poem that is like almost a suicide note, and your first instinct is not to call for help or not to think like this is a problem, red flag. It is to position yourself as the solution of this person's life. This is not love. I understand that now, but I did not understand that back then. That is a woman who had been trained since childhood that her value lives in being needed, that her safest way to make sure someone stays is to make yourself the thing that they cannot survive without. So I did it. I encouraged her dependency on me, not deliberately, but systematically. I became her stability safe little by little, her safety net, her entire emotional infrastructure. And I told myself that that's what good partners do. What I was actually doing there was building a relationship where she needed me too much to leave me, where I was in control again, where I was safe from being abandoned, from being rejected, from not being chosen. Because a person who can't function without you, they won't abandon you. I was never choosing love. I was choosing the closest possible thing to safety that I knew. Chaos felt like it was passion because passion was the only version of affection that I knew growing up. Dependency felt like connection because connection had never felt safe without conditions. Being needed felt like being loved because love, in every reference that I had before, came with a price tag. And even freely given love without drama, without conditions, without earning it daily, I didn't trust it. It didn't feel real. So here is what I see when I look back. The one who is needed, the one who is indispensable, the one who makes herself so necessary that no one ever has the freedom to just up and leave. All of the choices that I was making through these years, they were just a huge cry for help. The need of the external validation. that it was okay for me to exist in the world, to be chosen just for being. And if you are hearing yourself in any of this, please be kind to yourself as you hear it, because this is not weakness. This is not stupidity. This is what happens when the people who were supposed to show you what safe love is, what safe love looks like, they didn't even know it themselves. You learned what you were taught, but learning something different is possible. And I know it because I am doing it in my life right this moment. But there's a lot to this relationship that I still have to share with you, because that is its own story and its own episode. Because that story is where my old version started dying and my new version of clarity started being born. But before I go, I want to ask you again if there was a moment in this episode that you stopped hearing my story and started hearing yours. And which relationship was it? Which version of yourself did you recognize yourself? Tell me, leave a comment, send a DM, you know what to do. And once again, thank you so much for being here, for staying with me through the parts that were super tough, the parts that weren't easy, the parts that were long. And if this episode landed with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it, yeah? And I want to tell you that I am not invisible anymore, and neither are you, because I see you. Do you see yourself? I'll see you in the next episode. Ciao, ciao.